go. So we are recording live from the Cheshire Pilates of Cheshire studio in lovely Cheshire, Massachusetts, the Mindful Mat Pilates class. And today, the things that you may or may not need are a blanket of some form for padding body parts as need arises. Your foam roller is definitely getting integrated into class today, and a yoga block. So you'll need all of those things for class today. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time working on the shoulders. 'Tis the season of doing a lot of yard work, and so our upper bodies get used a lot, and for some of us abused, because either we're working really hard or we're doing too much work with some muscles and not enough of work with other muscles. And so just trying to get a better sense for what's available to us when we think about our arms and our shoulders. And I always find myself getting flustered when I talk about arms and shoulders, because it seems like they're two separate things when in fact they're all part of the same family, because your arms don't move if you don't have shoulders, and if you have shoulders but no arms, it's pretty much useless. So it's all the same system. We just have inherited this vocabulary from wherever that makes it seem like things are separate, that are actually all part of the same system. And a really nice example of that is the shoulder blade, right? I even listen to myself sometimes talking about the shoulder blade, and it's as if the shoulder blade is its own entity, when in fact the shoulder blade is part of your arm. As much as your hand is part of your arm, your shoulder blade is part of your arm, right? Just because you have this joint at your wrist that separates the long bones of your arm from your hand, you still think about your hand as something that's part of your arm. Well, your shoulder blade is the same, right? So you have this shoulder blade. It's not a rectangle, it's a triangle, but you have the shoulder blade. You have two of those, right? They're on your back. And the big corner of each of those shoulder blades, which is kind of a scoop shape, that's where your shoulder joint is. So your shoulder blade and your arm are your shoulder, they meet at your shoulder joint, right? And your shoulder blade is essentially sort of tracking and following all the different things that your arm is doing, because the joint has to follow the arm around. And so the shoulder blade glides up and down and in and out, and it even rotates a little bit, always tracking with the arm, right? So the arm has some independent movement relative to the shoulder blade, but then when the range of movement increases for the arm, the shoulder blade has to start adjusting, right? So we have all these different muscles that are part of the shoulder that are responsible for either stabilizing the shoulder when we're doing a small movement with the arm, or mobilizing the shoulder blade when we're doing a larger movement with the arm, right? So we kind of have to think about the shoulder blade the way we think about the hand, as really like this intrinsic part of this limb that we have, right? The other part of the shoulder is the clavicles, the collarbones, which are they're much more limited in terms of their movement. The clavicle is essentially joined to the sternum here, and it's also a part of the shoulder joint, but it's a much smaller part of the front of the shoulder. It's why when our arms end up getting jammed backwards, we're much more likely to dislocate or rupture part of the shoulder on the front versus on the back, because this is a much smaller part of the joint, so more vulnerable to strain or injury on the front than we are on the back of the shoulder, right? But all of this stuff should move, and it all should move rhythmically with the arms, right? So today, as we're doing this work, we really want to try to have a better sense of how these bones all sort of track and move synergistically when we do different things with our arms. So let's actually start with a little bit of rolling this morning. Let's come against the roller with our upper back, and we're actually going to roll out our upper back as it relates to our shoulder muscles, right? So take your hands behind your head. You can have your fingers interlaced or overlap your hands, whatever is more comfortable for you. And then feet flat, knees bent, lift your pelvis up off the floor and just start to push and pull your body back and forth and move your body in a way where you're starting to roll out the muscle tissue associated with your shoulders. Right? And, you know, you can roll that out with your moving your arms around a little bit, lifting or lowering your shoulder blades, right? Widening or narrowing the spacing between your shoulder blades as you're rolling, because all of that is good for releasing the muscle tissue that surrounds that area. So we'll just get that nice and warm and loose. And every few rolls, I'm having to pull my roller back onto the mat. So I'm just pushing myself right up off the top of my mat. Now, one of the areas, the muscular areas of the shoulder that tends to get way overworked is this upper trapezius area on the top of the shoulder. And we can actually get in and roll that muscle area a little bit. So the way to do that is to come onto your side a little bit and kind of lean the top of your shoulder against the roller, so you're not resting on your neck. What you're going to do is kind of pick yourself up. It's very awkward, but I'm lifting my hip off the floor a little, and I'm resting my head, and I'm trying to position myself so I can press against the top of my shoulder, right? And so it's tender. Right? It's really tender in there. That doesn't mean I shouldn't do it. It just means that it's tight. So I'm going to try and relax my neck as much as I can and just adjust myself so I'm kind of pressing into the top of that shoulder. Right? And then let's do the other side. So I'm going to flip over this way, just so you can maybe see a little better. Again, I'm going to get the top of my shoulder against the roller. I'm resting my head so that the roller has the weight of my head, right? I'm going to put my feet on the ground and kind of pick myself up. So I'm rotated, right, when I'm doing this, and I'm focusing on, I can feel the top of my scapula, my shoulder blade. Right? And I can definitely feel the tightness of the muscle tissue up there. And I'm just kind of rocking into that. Now, your upper trapezius muscle relates to the back of your neck. So it would be impossible not to feel something, but I'm not trying to roll my neck. What I'm really focusing on is the top of the scapula and the muscle, the big trapezius muscle. Now, since this is kind of a new thing, let's take a break from that side and let's go back and do the first side again, right? So just a couple things. So one, if that area is really, really tight, sometimes people feel nauseous at first when they're rolling it out. Sometimes you don't feel nauseous, but you feel heat after you're doing it. That's a really good sign because heat means blood. So that means we're loosening up some tightness and we're getting better blood flow in that area. So again, we're gonna focus on the feeling right above the scapula. Let the weight of the neck and head rest on the roller. Get your feet on the floor and you're pushing into the top of that shoulder. I'm trying to rest my neck as much as I can and really use my core strength and my leg strength to manipulate this rolling, right? So in terms of the list of people's least favorite things to do with the roller, this might be pretty high up on that list, but it is beneficial. Let's just give that a moment. And then we'll come down and one more time we'll go over to the other side. So what I'm feeling is a lot of heat in that area. So that's good. That means I'm getting some blood flow into those upper trapezius, right? So pressure on the top, resting the neck as much as you can, and just working into that upper trapezius area. Ooh, suddenly the room feels really warm. Okay, now let's switch back over to the first side. So there's another area of the shoulder musculature that tends to give people problems, right? And this is two very small muscles that are on the back of the body, kind of the side to the back. They're right underneath the shoulder joint, kind of below where the humerus bone and the scapula merge. And right in here, we have some attachments for two of our rotator cuff muscles, right? And because some people habitually sort of hold their arms against their body and pull their arms back in an effort to achieve a particular type of posture, these little muscles tend to get overworked as well. So what we're going to do is lay on a side and we're going to drape that area behind the armpit, right? So you sort of feel the outer edge of the scapula against the roller, right? Now, I was just going to put my head on my hand, but actually what I'm going to do instead is hold my head with my other arm so I can actually put some weight into that area and try to release those rotator cuff muscles that are right in that area behind the armpit, right? When those little muscles are tight, they make it very difficult for us to raise the arm overhead, right? Because they kind of freeze up the movement of the scapula. And if the scapula is inhibited by tight muscles, then that means that when we try to move our arm in a big way, the joint doesn't travel with the arm the way that it should, because the movement of the shoulder blade is why the joint can travel, right? That's what makes the arm such a spectacular evolutionary progression for the human body. We need a scapula that moves, right? Scapula doesn't travel, then range of motion is impacted. So let's take a break from that side and let's work on the other side. So we'll come over here and we'll position the back of the armpit area against the roller. right? And then we're gonna take this top arm and use this arm to sort of support the weight of the head so that we can work into that part of the shoulder girdle. Just moving around in there, finding a way to apply a little bit of pressure to restore some blood flow to those muscles so that they can start working properly again. I'll just give that another moment or two. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to have us actually work on is engaging the postural muscles, right? And very specifically, we're going to target this thoracic area of the body. The thoracic section of the spine is the part of the spine that basically starts at the base of the neck and goes all the way down to the bottom of the rib cage. That's the thoracic spine, right? And that's the part of the spine as we age, right? And it's not age's fault. It's not time living's fault. It's also lack of awareness, and to some extent, but that part of the spine tends to start to collapse as we age. And so it can also collapse when we're young just from poor habits, right? Like looking at your phone. So we're going to play with thoracic extension, and we're going to start with a gravity assist. So what I'm going to have you do is position yourself with the roller behind you and then lean back against the roller so that you can feel kind of that the roller is right below the bottom tips of your shoulder blades. And then take your hands behind your neck. Okay, so your hands are behind your neck. You do not have to interlace your fingers. You're welcome to, but you don't have to. Feet are flat, knees are bent. Okay, and I would like you to be able to see your elbows in front of you. Okay, so your elbows should not be wide at all. They should actually be kind of narrow. We want to keep the shoulders out of this. Okay, so with your hands wrapped around the back of your neck and your elbows narrow, what I want you to do is to sense that part of your spine associated with your rib cage and begin to move your torso backwards over the roller. So you feel your thoracic spine beginning to curve backwards. And then come back out of that using your abdominal strength. Right? So first thing I would encourage you to do is to have some awareness of what's happening to your front ribs. Right? So as you're going over backwards, the tendency is for the front of the rib cage to sort of explode outwards. What we want to do is just allow the front ribs to be soft and elastic. Second thing we want to be aware of is the low back and pelvis. That you're not doing excessive amounts of work in your low back and pelvis, and that you're focusing on allowing your thoracic spine to experience gravity-assisted extension. Let's do that one more time and we'll give the neck a rest. And we're going to come up and we're going to come off of the roller, and we're going to do that without the assistance of the roller or gravity. So I'm going to have you set this up in a particular way. So what I'm going to have you do is come to a kneeling position, okay? And I'm going to set this up from the front, but then I'm also going to show this to you from the side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my blanket so I can kneel on my blanket. Then I'm going to take my yoga block in skinny direction. And I'm going to put it between my legs so I can activate my inner thigh muscles to help my lower abdominals activate and my glutes to activate to create a very solid sense of a base for doing this movement. Okay, so that's going to be the setup. Now I'm going to turn sideways because I want you to be able to see the next part in profile. Okay, so once we're here, so I'm hugging the block, I'm going to take my hands behind my neck again, not behind my head, but behind my neck. And I'm going to keep my elbows forwards, right? And the elbows are going to stay forwards at all times. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do this incorrectly. So I'd like you to watch this the first time, okay? So the first time I do this, when I go back, I'm going to push my pelvis forwards, right? That's a huge mistake because it immediately sets me up for compression. So what I want to do instead is grip the block. So I feel a lot of activity in my legs. And I want to think about going up to go into extension. And I'm focusing on my upper back, supporting my neck, and I'm not letting my legs lean forwards or backwards. So I'm trying to reproduce a similar sensation to what I experienced on the roller and then coming back out of that, right? So take your time, use your legs as a strong foundation. Allow your abdominal muscles to elongate. Right. Now, so I'm going to pause for a moment and talk about the role of the abdominals here. So we have multiple abdominals, but the one I'm really feeling in my body is the rectus abdominis, and that muscle runs from the base of my sternum, all the way down to the pubic bones, right? So we have this long band of muscle here. And as I'm going up and backwards, I can feel tension in that muscle, but I'm trying to work with allowing that muscle to lengthen. I'm not releasing it because it's actually holding me. It's working with the back muscles. The second thing is the oblique muscles. Activation of the obliques, which attach to the surface of the ribs, is key because what we don't want is for the ribs to expand outwards, because then what we do is we lose stability, right? What we want to feel instead is a steadiness, right, in the shape of the rib cage, not an expansiveness, but a steadiness, so that again, as you're going backwards, these muscles can help to hold the body. If I expand outwards like that, I lose control from some of those muscles. So we don't want a rib cage that's flaring open, right? So that's important. So let's do that a couple more times together from this kneeling position, taking your hands behind your neck, right? Elbows narrow, strong legs. And we work skillfully with the feeling of abdominal tension that we're slowly letting out the slack. And then coming back, and we'll do that one more time. So in yoga, there's a posture called the camel. And this is actually how the camel is formed. But we're not leaning on our arms, right? So we're really having to use our strength to form this shape and extend the thoracic spine, right? And then you can drop your arms and bring your hands to the mat. And let's first go ahead and just shake out our legs, right? Because we've been kneeling. And then this is going to feel so great. Let's take a strong cat stretch. Oh, how nice is that? Come back to neutral. And let's do it again. Let's take the cat stretch. Now, just for fun, coming back to neutral, move this out of my way, okay? Let's go into the cow, but let's really feel that thoracic, the change in the thoracic spine as part of the cow. And then come back to neutral, and then go into flexion, which is the cat. And come back to neutral. So keep your focus on your spine, and rather than just tilting and dropping into the low back, tilting the pelvis and dropping into the low back, try to form that wraparound shape of your middle to upper back and engage those thoracic muscles. Come to neutral, and then go into cat, the flexion. And let's do that one more time, right? Focusing on that thoracic spine. Come to neutral, go into flexion, back to neutral, and you can come on off of your hands. Okay, let's set the blanket off to the side. Let's set the block off to the side, and let's come on to the roller. Well, yeah, let's come on to the roller, but first, again, I want to show you something, okay? So we're going to do a movement that I'm going to call snow angels when we're laying on the roller, right? So if you think about that, you know, that's a movement where you'd be like moving your arms up and down, okay? But what we're going to focus on is the connection between the movement of the arm and how the shoulder blade tracks with the arm. So we're going to do 6 movements with our arm shoulder apparatus. We're going to elevate, depress, protract, retract, and then we're going to feel rotation, upward rotation, downward rotation. That comes from a big movement of the arms, right? And so rotation of the scapula happens when we raise the arm overhead. So if my hand is representing my scapula, when my arm goes out, there's no change. As my arm continues to go up, the shoulder blade is going to rotate on my back in order for that shoulder joint to keep tracking appropriately with what my arm is doing. So it's going to feel like my shoulder blade is coming out. The bottom of my shoulder blade is coming out to the side of my body as my arm goes up, right? What's not happening is my shoulder blade is not elevating when my arm goes up. That's going to cause compression. So it's really tricky because everybody wants to do this when they raise their arms, right? It's just a natural inclination. So when we get to that movement, you really want to pay attention to that outward movement, that rotational movement of the scapula. So let's lay on our rollers. Let's lay on our rollers on our backs. I promise we'll get to some core work. We're just going to finish off with our arm work, okay? So once you're situated onto your roller with your feet flat on the floor and your legs in parallel, I want you to position your arms on the mat so that you're resting on the pinky side of your hand with your elbows straight, okay? With your elbows straight, your fingers are stacked, right? So you have some muscle tone in your arms. And so the first thing we're going to do is elevation and depression of the shoulders. And the arms, of course, are going to track with the shoulders. So elevation is the shrug. We're going to shrug the shoulders, and you want to feel that on the back, rising up the back of the neck, and then the depression is moving down. And when we depress the scapula, they slightly move towards the spine, right? So when we elevate, we're going up the back, and when we depress, we're going down the back. And we're letting the arm travel with the changing position of the scapula. Now, should the shape of your spine change when you're doing these movements? Well, it certainly could change, but let's see if we can just keep the spine out of it and just feel the movement in the shoulders, elevating and depressing. Elevating and depressing. Let's do that one more time. And depressing. And then just let the arms relax, let the shoulder muscles relax. You can rock yourself a little bit from side to side on your roller, just like you're using an eraser to clear the board. Okay, now protraction and retraction, your two big words for the day. So you're going to take your arms up into the air with your palms facing towards each other, and the distance between your arms is the same as the distance between your shoulder joints. So we want to feel like we're starting in a neutral position where we're supporting the weight of the arms, but that you can kind of feel the inside borders of the scapula touching the roller, or at least I can, proportionately that works for me. Okay, now the muscles that we need to contract to separate the shoulder blades are on the front of the chest, but they're also kind of under the armpits as well. So as we reach the arms up, we want to feel that the muscles on the front of the chest contract, but also kind of on the sides of the chest. And what that does is it creates a lot of space between the shoulder blades. What we don't want to add is elevation. We're not lifting the shoulder blades towards the head, right? We're bringing them away from each other. And then slowly relax that effort, right? Let's do that 2 more times, just practicing protraction. So we're reaching up and we're engaging the muscles on the front of the chest and a little bit around under the armpit, and you feel how that widens the distance between the shoulder blades without lifting them up, and then slowly lower back down. And we'll go one more time into protraction, where we reach up and then we lower down. Now, take your arms out to a T, right? And keep the weight of your arms suspended away from the floor, okay? Now we're going to work on retraction. So we're going to engage the muscles that pull the shoulder blades together, and that is going to lift the back of your chest away from the roller, and then we're going to relax that out. When we pull the shoulder blades together, we want to make sure that we don't elevate. Again, we're not pulling together and going up. We're pulling straight across. And if you could see yourself from the ceiling, you would see that your arms are changing length. As you pull the muscle, as you engage the muscles and pull the shoulder blades together, your arm length is reduced and then it returns to normal. Let's do that one more time. Retraction. And then relaxing that. Bring your arms all the way down to the mat. Let your arms relax on the mat and just rock your body from side to side. Let everything be loose. Let everything be relaxed. Now we're going to go to the snow angel. Okay, so you're going to begin with your arms held off the ground alongside your body with your palms facing down, right? And as we do this movement, the arm is going to rotate so that the palm faces up at the end, okay? Right? So what's going to happen here is you're going to start to open your arms away from your body, roll your palms to face up. Without elevating your shoulder blades, feel the tips of your shoulder blades swing out wide. And then bring your arms all the way back by your sides. We're going to do that a couple more times. So move the arms outwards, roll the backs of the hands towards the floor. Let the bottom of the scapula swing out wide. And then bring your arms back down by your sides. We're going to do that one more time before we go to kneeling. We're going to go out to the T. Roll the back of the hands towards the ground. Swing the scapula out wide. And then bring those arms all the way back down and let your arms relax. Just let the weight of your arms hang on the floor and rock from side to side. Now let's come off of the roller and do that same movement from a kneeling position. Okay. So we're going to set this up the same way we set up the first one, where we use the blanket for padding. And we use the yoga block to give us a really nice sense of grounding when we're moving the arms this way. Okay. Now, what is the role of the core here? Well, actually, it's profound. We want to actually cultivate a sense of abdominal muscle tone when we do this, right? Because if we get a lot of flaring of the rib cage, that's going to diminish our sense of motion in the scapula. So we're going to use our core strength to prevent the rib cage from really getting big and broad when we do this movement, okay? So you're going to start with your arms down by your sides, and you might want to watch me do this once, right? I'm going to have a lot of work through my legs and through my core. So I have a lot of muscle tone in my body right now, but my shoulders and my arms feel pretty relaxed. I'm going to begin to bring my arms out, turn my palms to face forwards. I'm not letting my ribs flare. Softening the tops of my shoulders, and as my arms go up, I'm feeling my shoulder blades do that, right? So I feel wider at the bottom than I do at the top. And then I'm going to come back down. Now we're going to go to a different rotation. We're going to bring our hands behind our backs, and we're going to try to get the bottoms of those shoulder blades closer to each other, right? We're going to come out. We're going to turn the palms forward, engage the legs, engage the core, and we're going to let the shoulder blades rotate without lifting. We're going to come down, turn the palms to face backwards. Try to bring the edges of your hands together behind your back. And we're going to do that one more time. Palms forwards, engage your legs, engage your core. Without lifting the shoulder blades, feel that swinging out. We're going to come down, palms face backwards. We're going to rotate the bottom tips of those shoulder blades towards each other and then relax. And if you thought that that was really hard, I'm with you. Because it is. Okay, now let's just let that whole area just rest and digest what all happened there. And let's go to the lower body. So let's grab this roller and let's get onto the mat again, right? And come to laying on your back. And once you're on your back, I'd like you to bring that roller underneath your pelvis. So you've got the back of your pelvis and your sacrum, the lower part of your spine against the roller, right? And I want you to make sure that the roller is up high enough. It needs to be resting against. You can feel kind of the protrusions on the back of your pelvis against the roller. If all you feel is vertebra, then you're too high. But I want you to get up as high as you can without going above the pelvis. Okay. So you have this nice feeling of a lumbar curve in your low back. You're not trying to flatten that out. You have a healthy curve, and we're going to sustain that with some muscle tone. Now, sometimes what happens when the roller lifts us, again, the rib cage explodes outwards. Well, that's totally destabilizing, right? So we really want to feel how those oblique muscles, the finger attachments of the obliques, sort of contain the rib cage and bring the rib cage. It's almost like they're retracting the ribs and not letting them get protracted, right? If that's even a term we can apply there. So it's kind of similar. We want to feel, some people will say the ribs are knitted, right, together or towards the center. So holding that feeling, ribs, bring the legs into a tabletop position without losing the curvature of your low back, okay? Now, from that tabletop position, let's begin to do a small movement of circling the back of the pelvis against the roller with the legs in a tabletop position. Okay, so we're working with stability in our core, but we're also mobile, right? So we have to find that happy balance between strength and flexibility. Come to the center and reverse that movement of circling the pelvis and sustaining that feeling of tabletop legs so that your legs don't feel loose, right? You're maintaining that tabletop sensation in those legs. Take one more circle around. Pausing in the center, we're going to go right into single leg stretches. Stretch the right leg out without dropping it. Bring it back. Stretch the left leg out without dropping. Bring it back. Again, right leg stretch. Bring it back. Left leg stretch. Bring it back. One more time, right leg stretch. Bring it back. Left leg stretch. Bring it back. Now pause. We're going to stretch both legs. More abdominal tone is necessary. Retract the legs. As you extend both legs, more tone is necessary. And then less tone as you retract. Two more. Extend the legs. Retract the legs. One more time. From a stable core, extend the legs, retract the legs, place the left foot down onto the mat, straighten the right leg without trying to bring it unnecessarily up over the body, right? So if you look at where my leg is, my foot is away from my hip socket. It's not directly above my hip socket. My foot is pointed, okay? Now, without rocking from side to side, I'm going to attempt to generate a controlled circle with my left leg. So I'm circling all the way around, and I'm using core strength to prevent myself from rocking from side to side. The leg is mobile, the core is stable. Pause at the top and reverse the direction of the circles. Now, I have a very strong core and good control over my body, so my circle is actually pretty big. You may not be able to do a circle that's this size, right? So you do it to the best of your ability, the size that you can control. Pause at the top, place that right foot down onto the mat. Bring that left leg up into the air with your foot pointed not too high. Foot is not directly above the hip joint. begin to make that circle. Right? Again, your core muscles are toned to create stability in the trunk so that you can make this motion with your leg without it pulling you from side to side. Pause at the top and reverse the direction of your circle. Take your time, go slow. Feel your way through the movement. Pause at the top and place that left foot down onto the mat. Okay, now to the best of your ability, position your feet so that your heels are just forwards of the backs of your knees. Bring your arms to the floor with your palms down. So your arms are just a little bit past the edges of your roller, right? And engage the muscles of your shoulders. So you actually feel your shoulders sort of pressing right down into the floor. Now lift your hips up off of the roller and hold that contraction. What you want to feel is like you're making this nice imprint. All the points of contact between your body and the floor are leaving an imprint. And it would be interesting to know which do you think is going to leave the deepest imprint and which is going to leave the shallowest imprint. And could you change things so that the imprint was equal all the way around? Lower your pelvis back onto the roller, repositioning it, right? And then let your arms come back to drape on the roller. Okay, one more time. I'd like you to bring your right leg up into the air. Okay, this time I want you to flex your foot. And then your left leg, you're going to lift it and extend it a little bit above horizontal. And now begin to scissor those legs. Notice that I'm not bringing my legs up super high. I'm doing a lot of work in my abdominals to be able to move my legs. Now point your feet and do the same thing. Pause with your legs up. One foot at a time, put your legs down. Lift your pelvis, right? Move the roller out from underneath you. Oh, and then just take a nice rocking from side to side, right? So that is a lot of work for those abdominal muscles. Now, what I'd like to do is to do a release with the roller, okay? And this is going to be a full body movement that we're going to do with the roller. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it up so that the roller is across the mat. And we're going to position our thighs, the middle of our thighs on top of the roller. Middle of your thighs on top of the roller. Then you're going to bring your forearms to the mat, okay, so that your forearms are in a parallel position and your elbows are a little bit forward relative to your shoulder joints, okay? Now that puts a fair amount of pressure onto my thighs, but that's okay because I want to roll my thighs, okay? And with a sense of both strength and mobility of my upper body, I want to begin to push backwards and pull forwards. So we're looking for this blend of strength and mobility. I'm giving my abdominal line a stretch. I'm engaging my back line, rolling out my thighs, and working my arms, which includes my shoulders. Let's do two more. and then push back off of the roller, right? And let's set the roller off to the side and come all the way onto the mat, onto our abdomen, okay? And overlap your hands underneath your forehead, bringing your legs together, bending the knees so that the toes point upwards. And once you've bent your knees, what I would invite you to do is sort of walk your knees further away from your head so that the front of your pelvis can rest more flat on the mat when you're in this position. Okay? And then what I'd like you to do is to begin to circle your legs around. Activating the muscles on the backs of the legs and hips so that we can stretch and release the muscles on the front of the legs and hips. So let's pause at the top and reverse that movement. Take it one more time around. Pause at the top and place those feet down onto the mat. Let's roll ourselves over onto our backs. And I'd like to take a decent amount of time to do a genuine stretch, a twist. So laying on your back with your feet flat on the mat and your arms out to the sides in a relaxed feeling, I'd like you to take your right thigh over your left thigh, right? So there's no space between your legs. And then what I'd like you to do is to lift your pelvis and scooch it a little over to the right. So in this position now, you feel like your pelvis is slightly out of line with your foot and your head. And then turn your legs towards the left and just let your neck and your head rest in the center. Right, so now what happens as you come down into the twist is your pelvis ends up more aligned with your head. So we've got a really nice stretch going on for the hip and the low back, right? But what I really want to get us to is the stretch for the chest. So now, notice that you could, with your left shoulder against the floor, you could actually reposition the left side of your upper back by just kind of moving your left shoulder and arm out from under you a little bit. And notice how that lets you rest more flat on the back of your left side. And then I want you to reach that right arm out with a comfortable effort. So there's an effort, but it's a comfortable effort. The arm is reaching outwards versus upwards. So it's an active stretch for the chest. And let's take a few more breaths here. Breathing into that stretch. And then let's come out of that, unwinding the twist and uncrossing the legs and coming back to center. Okay, now let's cross the left thigh over the right thigh. Lift the pelvis and move it to the left a ways. And then as you twist the legs to the right, let your head and neck rest in the center. Okay. And notice that once you come into that twist, you might feel like the back of your right shoulder is kind of jammed up. And so reposition your shoulder blade in your right arm so that you feel like you're resting more on the back of your ribs and less on a bunched up shoulder blade. on the back of your right chest. Now with that left arm, I'd like you to start to slide that left arm out. So there's an active lengthening of the left arm, not up, but out, while maintaining that rotational twist. And you can do whatever you want to with your head and neck, just make sure it feels comfortable. Let's give that 2 more breaths. And then rotate back to the center and uncross your legs and put your pelvis back into the middle. Good. Now, one more stretch I'd like us to do. I'd like you to roll onto your belly again. Roll onto your belly again. And just have your left arm available for supporting your forehead. Left hand or left arm for supporting your forehead. With your legs straight, I'd like you to bend your right knee and take your right hand back and find your right foot. Find your right foot. Okay? And for some of us, this is it. This is the stretch. Just even getting into this situation is the stretch, right? But if you're not feeling a stretch in this position, then what I invite you to do is to lift your right leg a little bit up off of the floor so that you can use the muscles on the back side of your body to produce a stretch for the muscles on the front side of your body. So for some of us, we're doing the stretch actively. And for some of us, we're doing it passively because just the action of grabbing the foot is a stretch in and of itself. If you're doing the active version of the stretch, give yourself a rest for a moment. And then you can do it one more time where you lift the leg and let that stretch the front of your thigh, hip, abdomen, chest, and shoulder. And then lower all the way down, and let's do the other side. So your right arm becomes your pillow. You bend your left knee, you grab your left foot, and if this is it, then this is it, right? No judgment. It doesn't matter, right? If you're not feeling a stretch, we're going to do a very active stretch by raising the left leg so that the action of lifting the left leg is producing a stretch for the front of the leg, the front of the hip, the front of the belly, the chest, and the shoulder, all on the left side. Soften that effort for a moment if you're taking that second variation. And then one more time, do the active stretch. Take one more breath and then release all the way down. Let go of the foot. One more time, roll over onto your back and take a hold of your knees, allowing your back to rest against the floor and circle the back of your pelvis around. Reverse the direction of the circle. And then you can release those feet to the floor and roll yourself onto your side. And as you're coming up and making your way to a seat, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for those.